Hello, everyone. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation, and my guest today is Rebecca Mountain. So, Rebecca runs a high performance coaching firm whose mission is to guide people in removing blindfolds so they can discover their own wealth, happiness, and fulfillment in all aspects of their lives. She's also an international keynote speaker, business consultant. She is a certified high performance coach and a two-time international bestseller author. So her book is titled The Dragon and the Goat. The one that wins is the one you feed, to provide over 2 dozen strategies on how to shrink your dragon, limit its ability to hold you back, and scale up your GOAT-ness, taking small steps towards the magnificent future you really want. So that was not so, didn't flow that well, that bio, but this bio will be also on your video profile, the notes. But now, this is a question that I love asking all my guests, one of my favorite questions. Who is Rebecca in her own words?
Rebecca is a conglomeration of different experiences that at one point I was a very small, very scared little girl, even as an adult. And one day looked around and I should have been happy and wasn't, and went on a journey to find out what does make me happy, like what truly makes me incandescently happy.
Yeah.
And so who I am today, which is kind of like, I'm like today, right now at 3:20 Eastern, and on May the 25th, when we're recording this, is someone who seeks to always generate everything from within. I spent much of my life worrying about what other people thought, comparing myself to others, getting validation from others, getting feedback from others, but never really trusting in myself to be able to generate the happiness, the confidence, and the success that I looked at. So today, I would say I am the happiest, wealthiest, and most fulfilled person that I can imagine, that consistently continues to seek new ways of being 1% better every day. I pick something in my life and say, how can I be just a little bit better at that? And that's kind of how I would explain who I am today. So I write, I speak, I raise children, I run my business, and I love, and every single day, I just love what I do. Like I wake up every day going, I just can't wait to get going.
That's truly beautiful. Before I ask you that question, that main question about how do we get to where you are, to believe in yourself, to trust in yourself, do you consider what you do to be a purpose? Is that the purpose of your life? Or do you use different words like a mission, and this is a goal, your destiny? Yeah, talk to me for a moment about that, Rebecca.
Purpose is the right word. But I look at purpose in 3 different levels. So there's 3 different things that go into my purpose. The first one is sort of about me. The purpose of my life is to be what? Like, so what are my internal things? So I want to be kind. I want to be curious. I want to be interested. I want to be present. Like these are all the words that I use. So I have a couple of words that I use, like those are actually my words.
Right.
If I'm looking at because a mission statement is words without emotional connection, without a personal commitment. So that's my personal commitment, is to be those things: curious, interested, present, kind. But the second part of my purpose statement is, how do I want to define my interactions? So in every interaction that I have, I want someone to feel heard and seen and important. So I'm talking to you, my phone's on airplane mode, my door is closed, right? I've got my little regular watch, not the iWatch, like, like I can't stand that. Like it's over there and it doesn't talk to me, right? So, so that's how I want people. So if I want to say, like, what is the purpose of all of my interactions, is I want you to feel like you're the most important person in the world to me right now. And all of the other things. And so I work on making sure that my distractions are managed. And then the last part of my purpose statement is a so that. It's not a so what, it's a so that. And it's my guiding principle of everything I do, the clients I bring in, the work that I do, the work that I don't do. And that is so that I can help as many people be happy, wealthy, and fulfilled. because I spent so much of my life being miserable, felt like I didn't matter, and poor. Right. And, people say, money doesn't solve things. Solves about 90% of them.
It helps.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you need enough so that you feel safe and secure and not stressed. And that is varying levels for absolutely everybody. My husband knows someone and he makes 160 million a year.
Wow.
And he's worried about his run rate. And I'm like, how? Because just everything goes up and down, right? Everything is relative. So, if I can help someone feel like they matter every day, because so many people, they punch in, punch out, and they're like, would anyone notice if I wasn't here? And I know what that feels like, right? And, to help one person to feel like, like I noticed, the world would notice, and here's how, that brings so much joy into my life. So I do the work that I know adds wealth, drives happiness, and creates fulfillment. And if I come across anything like, I get excited about ideas and I'm like, oh, maybe I should do that.
Yeah.
But I do an assessment. Will it make people happy, wealthy, fulfilled? And if the answer is no on any one of those three, well, you know what? That's not the work that I'm going to do. I don't have a team. I work by myself because that's my wiring, right? I'm also autistic, which creates an interesting wiring relationship. It explains why I kept getting fired when I was in Canada, because I can't do politics. I don't read people. But I love to hear the nuances and the patterns that I hear in people's speech, and then pull from my ideas, my university, and all the other sort of methodologies and say, hey, let's look at your life this way, because I think that's how you're wired. So I don't have a specific methodology. I am certified as a high performance coach, which is based on science, which is cool. But beyond that, I try to listen and be curious about what someone is saying to me.
Yeah.
So that was a long answer to a very short question.
Wow. Well, everything sounds very interesting and insightful to me. And it makes me wonder if you also do introspection in a sense of meditation. Do you have any of those, let's say, habits or practices that you engage with?
Yes. One of the things that I do a lot of studying, and one of the ways that we can do what's called shrinking the dragons, and I call it shrinking, not slaying, because the dragon part of is sort of a metaphor for the reptilian part of our brain, in which the amygdala is housed, and the amygdala is the larger it is, the more it revs up our nervous system, which creates anxieties and stuff like that. So I did some research on, are there any habits and methodologies that can physically shrink the amygdala, which is, again, two little almond-shaped things in our head, to therefore reduce anxiety and to create more of a centeredness in our lives. And meditation is one of them, but 5 minutes a day.
Yeah.
That's it. Preferably in the morning. But if you can take 5 minutes, sitting in a parked car, before you wake up, or in between meetings, or, just when you're like waiting for the coffee maker to finish, or the tea kettle to boil, or something like that, you just take 5 minutes to just focus on your breathing. And science has proven that if you do 5 minutes of meditation for 8 weeks, it will physically shrink your amygdala by 10%.
Wow.
It's really simple strategies like that. So some people feel like they have to go to a meditation class or do it for 20 minutes or an hour. And the answer is no, you don't. I do micro meditations all day long, in between all my transitions. So I had a client right before you, and I just did a 2-minute, micro meditation where I sort of say, okay, I'm going to release my attention to this, because I need to focus my attention on what's coming and really visualize how I wanted to show up for this. So that when you do those little micro meditations throughout your day, you don't drag baggage through the day, and you feel fresh the whole day long, no matter how busy your day has been.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Of course, I read in your book too. Yeah, you did mention breathing. So meditation, breathing, they go together.
Lots of breathing.
You said something that caught my attention. We'll talk in a moment about believing in yourself. But I also saw on your website, under videos, you had, I think you say, don't be nice, or something like that.
Nice is enabling, kindness is clarity. Yes, that is the video, and that is one of my most viewed videos too.
Yes.
So let me explain the difference between nice and kind.
Right.
So being nice is usually trying to make someone else happy. And oh, if you don't want to do it, it's okay, like, don't worry, you're trying to not make
Yeah.
someone uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And in some cases, like, someone needs to be made uncomfortable, right?
Mm,
But you kind
mm,
of, well, if you don't want to do that, don't worry about it. So an example of nice would be, an employee is underperforming, and the
yeah.
manager needs to have that conversation with them. So the manager comes in, hey, you're underperforming, and the employee comes up with excuse. And the manager's like, well, just do better.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just
Yeah.
do better. And the employee's like, done. And then leaves. And they're like, but they don't do anything. So
Right.
nice enables this kind
Um,
of
mm,
behavior. And it also negates how we're feeling. Because if we're being
mm,
nice,
right.
usually we're actually covering what we really want to say.
So true.
And nice people tend to
Yeah.
actually get physically ill more
Mm,
often than those who are kind. And
right.
kindness is a matter of saying what needs to be said with grace
Yeah.
and with care,
Mm,
but to say it anyway. So to be
yeah.
clear
Yeah.
and firm and unequivocal, things like boundaries, what's okay, not okay
Uh,
for you, but also just
yeah.
like, let's replay that whole scenario.
Yeah.
Employees underperforming, comes in, manager's like, hey, what's going on? Dude or chickie comes up with all the excuses, and the manager then goes in, but what's really going on? Right? Let's look at what we can do to fix it. What are you going to commit to doing that's going to change things? And let's create some clarity around my
Mm,
expectations as the manager and
yeah.
your role as the employee. Do we all agree? Yes, great. Let's set a plan and a commitment. Fantastic, out the door.
Right.
So that's the difference between nice, which is just like, okay, do better. I
Yeah.
tried, and
Yes.
kindness, which is like, hear ya, but I think we need to really, dive into something more. But you say it
Yeah.
with grace and kindness. It's not
Mm,
being a jerk
right.
about saying these things, but
Right.
saying the things that need to be said with grace.
Right. Yeah, that caught my attention because I do tend to use the word kindness a lot, but yeah,
Mhm.
it is confused with weakness, and you probably have heard
Yes.
that so many. That's like an old quote or idea,
Mhm.
limiting belief. And
Yep.
I do not stop using the word kindness because that's one of my guiding principles too.
Mhm.
Being true but kind. That's
Mhm.
interesting, right, Rebecca? How that plays out. It's supposed to be the other way around. Should be the easiest people to be truthful with, so we can be open. But then
Mhm.
you said something in the book that, well, I think it was your bio somewhere that caught my attention about that too. There's so many things that caught my attention about relationships. Yeah, you speak of marrying or being with somebody that you don't need to fix.
Mm.
So it's somebody who fits, so
That's right.
fits within your own inner truth.
Mhm.
Do you work with people? Do you coach people on relationships as well? I would love to know a bit more
All
about
the
that.
time. Yeah,
You do?
it always
Oh,
comes in at some point, yeah,
yes.
and various different levels, like fixing your
Yeah,
relationships and saying, "Okay, this one needs to kinda stop,"
yeah,
and because it's not feeding them in
right.
the right way. It's
Mm,
it's it's either codependency, or it's
yeah,
just it's not working for them. And, in
yeah,
terms of fixing, because, like, I was a total, like, "I can fix
yeah,
you,"
yeah.
right? And
I
never
can
did,
imagine.
by the way,
Yes, doesn't
spoiler.
work.
You
Yeah.
know, and usually that compulsion to want to fix other people
Yeah.
is a symptom of
Mm,
unease and unrest within, because we're feeling pain and we don't want someone else to feel pain. And
yeah.
so what we, instead of looking inward and going, how can I address my own pain, we try to alleviate the pain in others. And yet we may, quote unquote, help them, which
Uh,
usually we're not doing, but we
yeah.
still have this pain from within. And the other thing that I learned it from my son, who's autistic, and he's got ADD and OCD and
Yeah.
a whole bunch of really cool things, which makes him super
Yeah.
unique, and talk
Yeah.
very different way of parenting him versus the other
Mm,
three
yeah.
kids that I have.
Yeah.
Is that when people seek reassurance, if I'm like, okay, yeah, I give you the answer and then set them off, I'm not actually
Yeah.
helping them,
Uh,
because it continues to cycle in their brain and they could become anxious. And so my son would repeatedly ask me the same question over and
yeah.
over and over again.
Yeah.
And what I went to his therapist, and I'm like, how do I stop this? And she's like, you
Yeah.
actually don't give them the answer. And I'm like, that sounds like bad
Mm.
parenting. But
Yes.
it's not, because
Yeah.
by saying, you know the answer, and to give him a hug for just that
Mm,
physical comfort, and then spinning
yeah.
him around and sending him out the door. I teach him to rely on himself.
Yeah.
So this is the lesson we need
Mm,
to learn for ourselves,
mm,
to self-soothe, to self-reassure.
yeah.
And if whenever I feel a compulsion, I'm like, I see something in someone, I'm like, I want to fix that.
Yeah.
That's now my cue to, I am seeing something in someone else that is needs to be reflected
Mm,
back to me. And
mm,
then look at different ways. I teach a lot of emotional regulation,
yeah.
which is, I know I whip this thing out all the time, and it
Yeah.
terrifies my clients. I'm sure you've seen these emotion wheels.
Yes. Yeah.
So emotion wheels are great. You've got the core
Yeah.
emotions and then more specific. So, the more complex language we can use around identifying what's going on here,
Yeah.
then our brain can deal with it. And then by doing so, we start to recognize, okay, like I don't need to fix someone else. I need to focus on
Mm,
me and what's going on here. And by doing so, the reason why I fit with my current husband, again, I'm husband number two. I'm his third wife, so I always say I'm his
yeah.
favorite wife so far, right?
Yes.
So I'm just a real pain in the ass to get rid of now. So anyway, he stuck with me. But the reason that we fit is I did that work on what makes me happy, and I didn't ask him to make me happy.
Right.
I didn't depend on him to make me happy.
Yeah.
But because I'm happy within myself and he's happy within himself, and because we are two settled people,
Mm.
it was so easy to see how we meshed together. And he likes my weird, and I talk nonstop, and he's
Yeah.
very quiet, but he likes my chatter. And I'm like, well, that's great, because I'm like, blah, blah, and then blah, 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 and more,
Yeah.
So we just really
Yeah.
get along. So,
Yeah.
we're very different people, and yet we fit because I don't depend on him and he doesn't depend on me, but we add so much richness to each other's lives. And that's a wealth that I try to incorporate in when I work with my clients. I teach them how to talk to each other, right? So I teach them how to argue with each other, right? So that it doesn't become personal, but it becomes constructive, right? Again, so you avoid
Yeah.
why questions.
Yeah.
You'd go with what questions. You
Yeah.
don't use the word you ever in an
Ah.
argument, like, because as soon as you do
Yeah.
one of these,
Yeah.
you over, game over, argument is
Yeah.
lost. Everybody go home. Just
Yeah.
stop talking, because it gets worse from there, right?
Yeah.
So how do you? And it's really
Mm.
hard, because my
So
client,
true.
I said both of those things. You can't say you, and you have to use what questions,
Mm.
or how, or where, or whatever. And
Yeah.
he came back and he's like,
Mm.
"That's hard."
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
It's not easy. Yeah. It's
But the conversation has brought them, like, by conversing in that way, the people who looked like they were very much moving apart have
yeah.
now moved much, much closer together,
Mm.
because they can feel the love, as opposed to that defensiveness that can normally come in certain human interactions.
Yes. Wow. You're such an amazing person, Rebecca, I have to say.
I've got a
Amazing.
lot of work on me.
Yeah, thank you for being open, yeah,
Oh.
to this the inner world and exploring who
Mhm.
you are. It's just so beautiful
Yeah.
to see that too.
Thank you. I avoided it for a very, very long time.
Wow.
Very long
Yeah.
time. But when I started to look, and then it wasn't so bad, and then I found, and that's why I
Yeah.
wrote the book. Like, the book is all of the strategies I use, going from growing up in a cult to leaving the cult to finding out I'm autistic, and
Right.
bumbling my way through.
Yeah.
If I can help someone not take that long to bumble through and figure out what to
Yeah.
do, then
Yeah.
it's a good day.
For sure. Yeah. That's so beautiful. And that's what the more I ask people about what purpose is, the more I get the same answer. It's serving others. And I
Mm.
also heard something beautiful the other day. I think it was I do a lot of spiritual studies myself. I'm
Mhm.
a student of Advaita Vedanta, which is spiritual philosophy.
Mhm.
That somebody said something about being spiritual is closing my eyes in in feeling at peace and being at peace,
Mhm.
finding the inner peace,
Mhm.
and opening my eyes and asking the world, how can I help? How can
Mhm.
I serve?
Mhm.
So that kind of yeah, that resonated true to me. And then I see people like yourself, so many people that I meet all the time doing exactly that. Of
Mhm.
course, I don't know the other side of closing your eyes and being at peace,
Mhm.
which comes across a lot from people that I've talked to, and you too. So that's, but that kind of makes sense too, right, Rebecca? Once we find our own truth and believe in ourselves, trust ourselves, then that peace kind of sets in.
Mhm.
That has
Yep.
been my experience.
Yep.
So talk to me about that. moving from not even knowing ourselves to believe in ourselves and trusting ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do that? Some of us.
Yeah, it's a question I get a lot because you see these posters, believe in yourself and just believe, and
Yeah,
my question when I came across that was
yeah,
how. Like,
yeah.
I'm
Right.
not just gonna be like, oh, okay, I believe in myself. Like, what goes
Yeah,
into that, right?
yeah.
So I created sort of just a very simple methodology that I've named the GOAT path. And again, GOAT standing for greatest of all time, not actual goats like bleep bleep,
Mm,
very different.
right,
So
right.
I go from like right to left. So in terms of how I describe this thing, because it's easier to understand. So on the far right, we have our current reality, right? Things we love, things we don't love, but it's kind of where we are.
Yeah,
And if we become disenchanted with where we are, what we normally do is we pick like one or two things and we like bury your head and we just go whole hog.
yeah,
But the problem with that is and I've done this so many times. The problem with that is if you work really, really hard at something, but in the back of your mind, you're like, this isn't going to work. No one's going to listen. I'm not going to get like this. This is hard, or
right.
I don't deserve things, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart enough, and I'm always late for things, and I'm a procrastinator. Right?
Yeah,
If you've got all those thoughts come to create our belief system,
yeah,
and if our belief system is pushing us in this direction, and
yeah,
we're trying to go in that direction,
yeah.
you stymie, you get
Mm,
stuck, and that's where people get stuck. So I often hear, like, my first book is called Think Again,
yeah,
and initially I was going to call it Unstuck, and then I realized there's like 18 books called Unstuck.
yes.
So I went with Think Again, which then
Yeah,
was published the same year that Adam Grant published one of the same, and he's way more popular than me. So, but that's okay. I'm glad we had the same thought. But the
yeah,
idea is that you get stuck because you're trying to push so hard in one direction without dealing with your negative belief system or your counteractive belief
right.
system. So then the question is, how do you change that, right? Like,
Yes.
what do you do? So
Yeah.
there's two more train stations that go before the belief system, and they're very closely related. So one step back are the thoughts that we allow to percolate in our minds. And that's where the tagline of the book comes from. The
Mm,
one that wins is the one you
mm,
feed. And
mm,
that's what we're doing. If you
right.
feed the dragon with your negative thoughts, I can't do this. I don't deserve it. I'm not smart enough, good enough, old enough, young enough, whatever enough,
Yeah.
right? There's
Yeah.
lots, the enough list gets very, very long.
True.
If you're focusing on that, your belief system feeds off of it and it will hold you back and pull you back. So if you can take your thoughts and start to adjust them, it's not a matter of thinking positive. It's saying
Mm,
from I'm not good
yeah.
enough to I'm capable,
Yeah.
right? To, I'll never get there, to what's my plan,
Right.
right? From, what if to what can I control? What can I do about it? And so you start making these alternative things you can think that counteract the old habitual thoughts. You start to turn your belief system. But what I found in researching this book is there's one more step, and those are our feelings, our
Yeah.
emotions, and
Yeah.
being able to identify them. Because usually we start with happy, sad, mad.
Yeah.
Our brain doesn't know what to do with that. Like,
Yeah.
what kind of mad, right? Like when I look at the emotion
Yeah.
wheel, like this whole section is
Yeah.
anger. There's a
Yeah.
lot in here, and then we have
Right.
sad, and then there's happy, and all these
Yes.
other things. And so if you can articulate,
Yeah.
okay, this, I am dismayed, I am let down,
Mm,
I am left out, I am overwhelmed, I am thankful, I am curious, like, and you really get into defining those words and clarifying what it is going on in our emotional brain, because we have three brains. We have an emotion, a thought, a thinking brain, and a logic brain. Our
yes.
emotion brain kicks off first, but our thoughts are slower, but they are very much related. So if we can manage and regulate our emotions,
Mhm.
not to become less emotional,
Yeah.
but do not become, a client of mine has been told all of his life, be less emotional. And I'm
Yeah.
like, Scott, do not follow that
Yeah.
that argument.
Yeah.
All you need to be is more in control of the emotions you
Mm,
have so they do not overwhelm your system.
yeah.
And then look at the thoughts that lead from those emotions. And if those start to turn, your belief system naturally turns, which changes the way that you act in the world and you appear every day, which then changes your reality. And that's why sometimes when people do the work way over
Wow.
here, the stuff at the end is like, oh, good grief, like,
Yeah.
how is my life so much better now? And I'm like, well, they're like, because I didn't do anything, but they did. But
Yeah.
it's not like their mind did all the work back here. So sometimes it's not like visible to them in terms of the adjustment that has been made. So that GOAT path, so it's emotions create our thoughts, or they don't create our thoughts, but they drive our thoughts. Thoughts, thought often enough, become our belief system. Our belief system is what guides our actions, which then create our reality. So if
Right.
you don't like where you are, don't work super hard, hustle, grind, work 90 hours a week. I did it. It didn't work. Okay. So just take my word for it.
Yeah.
But when I started to back the train up to start working on all these other things, then it became clear this is what I should do. Because I ran a social media marketing agency, made $1 million a year, team of 14, and I just wanted to like never get out of bed. You know, my phone was lava. I hated that thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then I sat down and I asked myself, like, where
Yeah.
is that coming from? But what do I actually want? And when I
Mm,
did this work,
yeah.
that work caused me to say, I don't want this agency anymore. And I mean, COVID really helped to stab it in the eyeballs. So that was it. But, you know,
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
wrapped up. But I'm
Yeah.
like, but then what do I want? But by narrowing down my focus on these are the things that bring me happiness and joy, I
Yeah.
wanted to be a coach, but on bigger things, not just on like marketing, because that's where I was initially going,
Yeah.
because I'm good at it, but I wanted more. I wanted to have a deeper impact, but I wanted it based on science. Well, that narrowed it
Mm,
down to one choice.
yeah.
So, ta-da, here
Yeah.
I am, and then based on that methodology, I've grown it from there because I just keep asking myself, am I doing what makes me happy? Can I make other
Mm,
people happy? Can I
mm,
open up their eyesight so they can see their own GOAT path? Because
yeah.
everyone's is different. No one is the same.
True.
And that's most important because people do try to look left, look right, and imitate.
Ah,
And you
yeah.
can't imitate and be happy. It brings you
Ah,
nothing but pain. And as an
mm,
autistic woman, we don't get diagnosed with autism usually until we're in our 40s.
yeah.
And I
Mm,
was 46 when I
yeah.
was diagnosed as being autistic. And I'm like, well, that
Yeah.
explains a lot because I'm a master imitator, and that's one of the ways that it manifests. And so, you
Ah,
know, I understood now like why it was difficult for me to stop imitating and pretending
yeah.
because it's my wiring to mask just how I'm different.
Right. How amazing. Oh my God, Rebecca, the more I listen to you, I see how complex we can be, right? Human beings are really, we have to admit,
Hmm.
the brain, how the body works, and all that.
Hmm.
But it takes one, um, it's so simple to me just to be aware, this is how I function. This is how I
Hmm.
think, that's a pattern, or even identify a pattern.
Yep.
So speaking of spirituality, I know you didn't have a good experience with the religious settings. You called, it was a cult.
It was
It,
called,
it,
yeah.
it- that made sense to me. Anything that has to do with the idea of imposing anything on another, and it
Hmm.
takes the freedom out of you, then that to me is not, I mean, that's not spirituality to me.
No.
Right? So
Yeah.
do you have any spiritual beliefs or views of life in yourself for these days, or you just kind of gave up on all of it?
No. um, no, I definitely didn't give up. I just believe, and I don't give it a name anymore because I don't want to narrow down the beliefs because I believe we learn as we grow.
Yeah.
But I am fascinated and inspired by the incredible interconnectedness of humans
Mm,
and nature, and I believe
yeah.
that there's a symbiosis that happens there, and I just try to find beauty in that and to be open and accepting to it and seeing that things are going to happen, and it seems like incredibly almost impossible that
Yeah.
something like this could happen. Like I shouldn't be alive right now based on the car accident
Yeah.
that nearly ended my life when I decided I didn't decide. It was that moment where I thought I
Yeah.
can't belong to this group anymore.
Right.
But from there, like people have asked me, do you hate God? I'm like, no, like not in the least. And I just believe whatever belief
Mm,
anyone if it brings you joy,
yeah.
and if it does not hurt another individual or
Right.
infringe upon the freedoms of you and or any other
Mm,
individual,
yeah. Yeah.
then and it like truly brings joy and freedom and spirituality and
Mhm.
kindness and
Yeah.
not altruism, right? So not
Yeah.
to, because I was
Yeah.
grown, I was raised to believe that I was nothing
Ah,
and worse than
yeah.
nothing. And especially in the cult, it was like men, children, cats, dogs, houseplants, women, right? Somewhere down
Wow.
here. And so when
Yeah.
you're constantly reinforced, you are nothing, you will be nothing. I got told I was going to hell and my children were going to hell because I went back to work after my second child because my ex
Wow.
couldn't support us. Like it just, we couldn't do it on one income.
Right.
And yet, so those kinds of things where there's rules upon rules upon rules, and
Yeah.
judgment and consequence and shame.
Yeah.
Like that's not spirituality.
No.
That's cruelty.
Ah,
And that cult that I grew up in right
yeah.
now is in the process of imploding,
Oh,
because
yeah.
I'll just make this really brief. You
Yeah.
can look it up.
Yeah.
They're called the 2x2s.
Yeah.
That's the phraseology, but it's a safe haven for pedophiles and child sexual abusers.
Ah.
And they would just move people around. So there'd be abuse over here and they'd move them
Mm,
over there. And, and it
mm.
perpetuated and they wouldn't go to the police. And people were told, keep it safe, push it under the carpet.
Right. Right.
I'm
My
hoping,
God.
the thing will collapse. It may or it may not. I don't know. But like that is
Mm.
how I grew up, but that's not who I am today, because I'm like, that is what other people have used based on fear and greed and
Yes.
power.
Yeah.
That is not religion.
Right.
That is
Right.
fear and greed and power and
Yeah.
money. And let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
Spirituality is an openness.
Mm.
It's when it's when you finally feel like you can breathe.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's what I seek every single day. If I feel like like taking short breaths, I'm like, I need to be open
Mm.
again. And whatever
Yeah.
can make me feel open and connected and
Mm.
kind and grateful. And I
Yeah.
feel that gratefulness coming back to me, because I'm a huge believer. And if I want people to appreciate me more, I must
Yeah.
appreciate them first.
Mm.
If I want to feel more loved, I must love first. If I want more friends, I must be a
Mm.
friend first.
Yeah.
Because when you push that out into the world, the world responds to those
Yeah.
kinds of things. And that's that response that I'm answering this in a very long way, but
Yeah.
that responsiveness of the world is really what I look to as my spirituality. So in terms of afterlife, I don't think
Yeah.
anybody has a really good idea. So I'm just like,
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
just in for the ride. Whatever's over there, like I'm in. Later,
Yeah. Yeah.
much later. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm in for this for now, right? But I try to create
Yes.
my heaven here.
Mm.
This can be
Ah.
my heaven, and that's up to
Mm.
me to create it.
Very wise. Yes. Yeah, that's very spiritual to me. What can I
Mm.
say? I mean, everything you do, your presence, it's highly spiritual.
Oh, thank
And
you.
that's what I call spirituality. It's going within, knowing your own power and
Hmm.
living that truth without any shame, without any
Yes.
excuses, just going
Yep.
for it
Absolutely.
in a beautiful way as you do it. Thank you again, Rebecca. Yeah, I wanted to say this like in the middle of this.
Hmm.
It's beautiful. It's inspiring though to see you. Now I am in the presence of a lot of powerful and empowering women.
Hmm.
But there's something about you that's a lot of fun in a meaningful way. It's so it's a light. That's what we need too. We speak of light, in the spiritual world, but
Hmm.
that's what it is to be fun. It's to have fun, isn't it? To
Hmm.
enjoy whatever this is, which we call
Hmm.
life.
Yep.
So, what was the main intention when you wrote the book, The Dragon and the Goat? Did you set an intention?
I did actually, and then it kind of morphed. So
Yeah.
I started researching the question, why don't people really do the work that they're supposed to do?
Yeah.
They know that, like, I should be doing this, I need to do that, and yet we hold back and we don't do the things we should do.
Yeah.
And from there, I discovered that there's two warring forces within us. One is the dragon, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, which
Yeah.
is the people pleasing, the being nice.
Yeah.
It's the contrast effect. We compare ourselves to others. It's our highly emotionally charged memories that re-trigger us again and again when something feels like something bad that happened to us before,
Yeah.
and we retract and we pull back. So I started studying that, and then I'm like, okay, so if we nail that part, how do we actually build the life we want? So that's where it moved into also researching the GOAT, which is our greatest of all time.
Yeah.
And each one of us is our own greatest of all time.
Mm.
But we
Yeah.
need to figure out what that is. Like, as a coach with no team, I'm often told, oh, well, you're not successful because you don't have a team. And I'm like, okay, that's just what everyone else says. So the
Right.
GOAT is to
Right.
not live your
Mm,
neighbor's life, to
mm,
not run your competitor's
mm.
business. It is to
Yeah.
say, how am I wired? And as an autistic woman, like honestly, I just
Yeah.
don't play nice in the sandbox. I don't get it. I can't read people. And so like it just no one comes out alive on that. Right. So I'm just like,
Yes.
if I want to, make as much money as I want, I know how to do that. I create, and I know my path. If I want to
Yeah.
make $1 million a year, I know exactly how to do it. And I
Mm,
don't need a team, right?
right.
Where some people feel like you have these prescribed ways of living. And
Yes.
I
Yeah.
try to break that. I'm like, no, you don't.
Mm,
You don't have to do that.
I
You
love
don't
that.
have to think that.
Yeah, I
You
love
don't have
that.
to be that.
Mm,
What do you want to be? And it's
yes.
so hard for people to answer
Yeah.
that
I
question
can imagine.
because
Yeah.
as soon as they say, "What do you want?" they go right into how they're gonna do it and why it's so
Yeah.
complicated. I'm like, "No, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
Pull back. What do you want? What makes you
Mm,
happy? What work makes you happy? What schedule
yes.
makes you happy? What environment? What people? What
Ah,
things? What experience?" And that's where I start. If you wanna say, how do I find the goat within? You
yeah.
start asking yourself what makes you happy. Not how do you make yourself happy, not is it hard or possible,
Mm,
the whole like don't say no. Just give
yeah.
yourself that rule.
Yeah.
Whatever comes to your mind, you just jot that stuff on paper, no matter how fantastical it may sound. Because if you look at that and you feed those thoughts into your system, it becomes your belief system, and you will now see opportunities that you didn't see before. So it's
Right.
something in our brain called the reticular activation system.
Yeah.
What is important to you, your brain will see proof of. So
Right.
I drive a red car, suddenly everyone's driving red cars.
Yeah.
I get pregnant, all the women in the world are 9 months pregnant. I'm like, that escalated quickly, right?
Yeah.
So these are the kinds of things that
Uh-huh.
that lead into it's why it's so important that we need to shrink the part of us that holds us back,
Mm,
to turn anger, guilt,
yeah.
shame into our allies,
Yeah.
not our enemies. Because I
Right.
have turned those emotions from something deeply hurtful into
Yeah.
something vastly resourceful for
Yeah.
me. And then
Yeah.
to say, but what do I want? And when you
Mm,
articulate, like, this
mm,
makes me happy and that makes me happy and such and such and such, well, the options then start to narrow and now you
yeah.
can make a choice. Now it's not like, do what you
Yeah.
love. What's that? Right?
Yeah. Right.
It's okay. Let's narrow down the bazillion of options into something like, and then you can do
Yeah.
some, refinement and you get to that place where, you still have to, I've tried so many things to get to where I am now, but I'm down to 3 different programs that I offer,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's it. I speak and I write books. I write books
Yeah.
because I want the message to go as far as I possibly can,
Right.
and I can't reach everyone. So maybe a book is going to get into the hands
Yeah.
of someone who's going to feel
Yeah.
different and hopeful and
Yeah.
and inspired, but then they do something, right? Because they do
Yeah.
some of the work that goes on in the book. So that's kind of the book started with why don't people do the work they do, and ended with these two pieces of us that are always at war every minute of every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you were talking about awareness as being
Yeah.
the root of everything. It's absolutely where it starts,
Yeah.
because where you put your awareness is where you put your focus.
Yeah.
And if I want to live my greatest of all time life, then I must focus on all my
Mm,
great things, the things,
mm,
my passions. I need to focus on my happiness, on what fulfills me. And there's like
yeah.
a almost 2 dozen strategies in the book on all the different ways that you can
Yeah.
be a goat. The purpose question you asked me at the beginning, that's in
Yeah.
there, right? The exact strategy, the 3 levels, the 3 different steps of creating your purpose statement in that book, right? I'm
Yeah.
putting it, it's over there, like you can see it, but it's in the book. So those are the kinds of things that went into what kind of where it started and how it's going.
Yeah, it's I mean there's so much information there. It's insightful. It stopped me many times. I love the part that you just mentioned about the goat life. They have 5 steps, and then what work makes you happy, the questions, and then you
Mhm,
say why defining happiness is a must. There's
mhm,
you explain why, and that also caught my attention. And then step 2, when you say what level of income would make you happy. So
mhm,
this is something that we usually don't connect. That's something that even in this moment I have to say, it's not something that I think about, because, as you said, is one of your messages that I resonated with right away for a reason. Impact over income.
Yes.
So that's the reason why I don't focus on money and how much money I can make doing this.
What?
But it is part of the path, right?
Yeah.
Of the GOAT life. So how do we balance that, or how do we kind of embrace the idea that money is also energy? It's love, basically. It's the giving and receiving, isn't it? What love
Yep.
is?
Well, it is for sure. Like, and the important thing is to say income is part of the equation, but it is not the point.
Yeah.
So people who are driven by
Yeah.
income, it's really looking at what drives you. So
Yeah.
I used to be driven by income. Where is my next client going to come from? Can I pay my mortgage?
Yeah.
Fear, 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 fear.
Yeah.
Running out of it, right?
Yeah.
Not having enough in retirement, not putting enough into savings, not have enough for my children to go to
Yeah.
college or university, right? And if you live in that fear, you drive yourself based on
Yeah.
like butts in seats and how many clients do I have? And you're like, yeah, I'll do a good job. But like you
Yeah.
do a lot of marketing and that's where all your energy goes. That's a fear-based way of living.
Mm.
So what I did when I recreated this business that I have now is I flipped that, because I used to be run like that. And
Yeah.
now I'm like, it's impact. If I am driven, instead of by money, I am driven by the results I get from my clients. So if I do incredibly good work for my clients, I will make as much money as I want.
Right.
But it is the gift
Right.
that comes after after I put in the effort
Right.
and I helped people and they were my focus and everything I did. Like this is just like part of my
Yeah.
library. I have
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
2,000 other books in my basement, right? So, because I
Yeah.
read like a crazy person, because I
Yeah.
want to bring more, right? I
Yeah.
have clients who are like, well, they're people pleasers. So, I found a book, I was referred to a book actually called The Joy of Saying No. And I just bought them all copies and I send it
Yes.
to them. Read this book,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then I read it myself. It's got, all the different ways that we can people please and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
it's the impact part of what I do is literally the only thing I focus on. That's
Yeah.
it. And I know, we talked about trust.
Yeah.
I trust that
Mm.
the money will come.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I am an exceptionally good wife, if I
Yeah.
have an idea of what an exceptionally good wife is, and I strive myself to live up to my terms of what an exceptionally good wife is, not anybody else's, mine,
Yeah. Yeah.
then I will have a good marriage. If I set the terms of what it means to be an exceptionally good mother and a good stepmother, I have 2 kids of my own and 2 stepkids,
Yeah.
then I will have a good relationship. So I don't it's not forcing things. It's about of like,
Mm.
what value can I bring? How can I bring myself into this? What control can I exert in here in my life?
Yeah.
And because I am focusing on, the results I want to see, particularly in we talk about business in terms of clients,
Yeah.
the money just comes. And that was a really hard pivot. Like I would sit at my desk and I go, impact over income, impact over income. It's going to be okay. This is not a dumb idea. This is not a dumb idea. This is a really good idea. Right. And
Yes.
it took probably the most courage to be able to make that switch to say, I
Yeah.
will trust the money will come.
Mm.
My focus needs to be on always improving what I deliver. And I can't even begin to tell you how well that's done. I bring home, like my
Yeah.
agency was good, but the profit was very small. I bring
Yeah.
home, I don't know, 20 times what I used to make.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And I work 35 hours a week, maybe.
Yes. Oh my
So,
God,
because that's
Rebecca.
part of what makes me happy.
Yes.
I work remotely, makes me
Yeah.
happy.
That caught my attention too. So it's being very clear on what makes us happy and
Yeah.
how. And I see you talk about schedule, so the environment and the people even around.
Mhm.
What kind of people would make me happy? How do you define happiness today? Like in this moment, what's happiness to you as a general thing,
As a
without,
general thing.
yeah, without
That's
being
a hard one to nail.
right, right.
Happiness is controlling what you can control and trusting the process for the rest,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
trusting you can handle the rest. That's
Mm.
probably better. So knowing I
Yeah.
can control what I can control
Yeah.
and knowing that I will handle the things that I can't.
Right.
Because happiness is an absence of
Mm.
anxiety, it's an absence of sadness, it's an absence of fear, right?
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
creates that absence? What makes those things go away? Control
Mm.
and self-reassurance. So
Yeah.
that can create, and happiness springs from that. So happiness isn't something that you can just like make happen. You need to make space for it.
Yeah.
And when you do that, it's just here. It's just part of
Yeah.
us, right? It's like joy, and like that
Yeah.
you can't stop joy when you really want to,
Mhm.
throw it around. So
Yeah.
that's probably how I
So
would
true.
define it. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. For some, of course, I understand what you mean by control. I usually don't use the word control
Hmm.
because it kind of in my brain, the idea is it's forcing, it's trying to manipulate situations or myself to do
Hmm.
something. So, in a sense, when you say control, it's more being being very aware of the talents we have, the skills that we carry
Hmm.
that can solve a situation. So it goes back to trust, isn't it? To me,
Yep, it does. Yep, and it's also a little bit of part. How can we affect things?
yeah,
So if you, I understand the whole idea of control, but the,
yeah.
the the fact of the matter is, being out of control is usually what creates a lot of
Yeah,
anxiety, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
like, and when we try to control things outside of us, like, and we try to push the envelope, and that's where
yeah.
the word, like, it feels very forced,
Yes.
right? You're
Yeah,
right. But so in
yeah,
terms of like for us, when I use the word control, like self-control, but also
yeah.
I am the master of my destiny. If I don't like where
Mm,
I am, I can choose to do something different, right?
right.
So it's a freedom, it's a lack of fetters, right? So maybe
Ah,
unfettered would be a better way of describing it.
yeah.
But knowing that I can, wherever I want to go,
Mm,
I can make that choice to move in that direction. So that's where the kind of like almost like a joystick, right? If I want to go
yeah,
that way, I'm like, I'll go
yeah,
that way,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
right now, there's nothing that holds me back. There's nothing that makes me feel I can't do something. I'm in a
yeah.
wonderful relationship. So if
Yeah.
I need to go away, or I feel that's something that's important, and he's like, cool, am I coming? And sometimes it's almost always yes, but
Yeah.
every once in a while it's like, nah, it doesn't really fit. And he's like, okay, I'm
Ah,
manning the fort, right? And so
ah,
that, right, but I chose to be in that relationship, and I
right,
continue to choose how we talk to each other. So maybe
right.
there's so many other words that can be in there, but yes, I can see how the word control can have some negative connotations to it.
Yes, but you explained you're very clear about that, what that means. And that's what it came across to me, hearing from you, of course.
Hmm.
So we're almost at the end, and I have too many notes here and all over the place, all over the place, all over the place. There's something that was funny that in the book that I read. I think when you speak about Stephen,
Oh, Stephen, yes.
yeah, that caught my attention. You say Stephen has a smile that makes his eyes disappear.
Yep.
You always know when he's happy. You can't see his eyeballs anymore.
Yep. They
I
totally
love that.
disappear.
I mean, that was like something that I know that he was going through. I mean, he went through a lot of
Hmm.
the path of fear, from fear to love, from fear to freedom.
Hmm.
But that really caught my attention. If we all could do that more often, smile so genuinely that our eyes disappear,
Hmm.
and we can't see them anymore. That was a very light, fun, meaningful, impactful message. And I know you probably didn't think it that way, but it caught my attention
Well,
immediately.
that's good. Well,
Ah,
and it's a genuineness
yeah.
that, when he's there, and he's been my client for like 2.5 years, and
Yeah.
watched him go through so many changes
Uh,
because he's a gay man in a small town USA.
yeah.
A lot of acceptance issues, and he just tackled everything head on because he
Yeah.
decided that he
Mm,
didn't want to be held back and held down. And his
yeah.
trajectory in terms of where we started and how it's going is just,
Uh,
it's phenomenal
yeah.
when you allow that joy to kind of really, really shine through. And it's not that it's all
Yeah.
been easy,
Right.
but that joy you can always tap into it. It's always there. Even
Yeah.
in your darkest times, there's
Mm,
always something. And it's not that you just feel optimistic or like make the light of it, but you're just like, I can find my spark. I can find that
yes.
light within, and I can bring it. And he just really did that. So
Yeah. He's open to his own greatness. That's what.
he
That's
very
all.
much is.
That's
Yep.
what it takes, isn't it? So that I had to mention that. And then there's something else that caught my attention was I think it's a book on. You mentioned the chapter on fear. I think it was The Secret Letters of the Monk Who Sold His Ferrari
Yeah.
by Robin Sharma.
Hmm.
So that caught my attention too. The quote says, "Indeed, the greatest risk in life is taking no risks. But every time we do that, which we fear, we take back the power that fear has stolen from us. For on the other side of our fear lives our strength. So that caught my attention too. I never heard about this book. So that was an
It's a good book.
yeah.
It's a very, very good book. A lot of deep philosophical kind of comments about why we do what we do and how we can get ourselves stuck in a hole. And it was one of the pivotal books that really helped to crystallize my idea of the dragon and the goat, because he talks about fear, that steals things from us.
Yeah.
And that's what our dragon does. If we live in the
Yeah.
dragon mind, right, that fear-based mind, comparison, triggered
Yes.
mind, it steals the life from us. And so when I saw that, it's like on the other side is our strength. I'm like, I saw the other side was our goat, and I'm like, hey, this works, right? So,
Perfect together.
Yep,
Oh
it is.
my God. So wonderful. And so the book is structured this way. You have book one, part one, Time to Meet Your Dragon, and then book one, part two, How Are You Living Your Goat Life? Question mark. Book two, How to Shrink Your Dragon, and then book three, Stepping into Your Goat Life, which I was like rushing to get the goat life. I cannot lie. I went straight to it. And then you have on your website the programs that you offer: high performance group coaching. You have high performance coaching, high performance masterminds, and high performance coaching for teams.
Yep.
And in that video that I really like, being nice, stop being nice, and the kind and nice. I like that too. And then you have a podcast, the Rebecca Mountain Show. Talk to me for a moment about that before we end the conversation today, Rebecca.
So the podcast, I'm going to absolutely admit, is a bit of a cheater podcast. So I take all my videos and I turn them into MP3s, because everyone will consume content in a different way, in a different channel. So it just allows people to listen to whatever it is that I was talking about, whether it's video or podcast. So that's really what that is. I call it a cheater podcast because so many people like yourself, they put so much effort into these things. And I'm just like, well, it's just sort of like little snippet messages that I have, like 5-7 minutes long. But all of my content, all of my videos, both on my website and in my podcast, I start off every single one with, if I'm going to say something in this and someone does something, how is their life going to be better? Like, in what materialistic, metric, measurable way is someone's life going to be different, because they've taken this particular advice, and I have these little golden buckets that I use for a mastermind recently. And you write your self-defeating messages, like, I'm not good enough, smart enough, whatever. And you put it into the bucket and then you burn those messages. Right. So that was my video today, which was like, hey, you got to get these buckets. Right. And then the cathartic closing ritual of burning these messages, because if you throw them in the garbage, you can just pull it out again.
Right.
But if you physically watch something incinerate, it really helps you to release your emotional connection to that thought. So every video in itself has its own purpose.
Yeah, I love that part too. And I love the bucket idea, the burning, especially all that. What a great idea. That's inspiring. I think I'll suggest that to my husband. It makes me think about my husband. I don't know why. Hopefully he's not going to watch this video. Oh, maybe.
That's okay.
He's not going to like that.
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Well, you never know. It might be really cathartic, and there might be some openness that can come because you're trying something really new. We did that like in the mastermind as a group at the end, where we all stood, said our name, read the message, and threw it in the fire, and then everyone just sort of like clapped and cheered, because it's hard to let go of these messages. And if you're going to do that, so for the listeners, if you're going to do that, you may find you need to write the same message and burn it multiple times. You do it until you're done. Like, if you're like, I'm not good enough, throw it in the fire. Like, nope, still not gone. Write it again, throw it in the fire. Write it again, throw it in the fire. Right. So but it is literally a psychological closing ritual that allows us to release our emotional connection to some of these really self-sabotaging thoughts.
Yes, I love your methods. They are fun. They are highly effective. I'm aware of them. Some of them, or most of them. But it's the having somebody like you to kind of encourage us to do what we must do in order to elevate, to meet our greatness. That's what it is. To meet that great me that's here, and we don't often get to say hello to.
No,
and that's right. Most of us, sadly, I say that.
And it's interesting. The reason we don't ever meet our goat is because we don't believe we're worthy to do so.
Yes,
And when
Rebecca.
you deal with all
Right.
that dragon shrinking stuff, that
Right.
starts to push down some of those feelings of lack of worth
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
opens up space for the goat. So as you feel more worthy of yourself to yourself,
Yeah.
it creates a relaxation and allows us to then step into this greatness that has always
Mm.
been here. We
Yeah.
have all the answers, we have all the reassurance, we have all the confidence and motivation all right
Yeah.
here. We just need
Yeah.
to pull away the things, the curtains
Mm.
that are preventing us from having full clarity. But we
Yeah.
can do it. And that's why I wrote the book, Pull Away the
Yeah.
Curtains and just step into your greatness.
Yes. How wonderful. Thank you so much for being you and for doing
Thank
what you
you.
do. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you for having me.
So before we end the conversation today, I have the website rebeccamountain.ca. That's your website. I'll have that on your the interview profile. But the last question will be this one. What three experiences you wish everyone to have before they die, before they lose the body?
Hmm. True love
Yeah,
of any kind, whether it is
yeah,
spouse or
mm,
family or child, there's
yeah,
just true,
yeah,
unadulterated, unconditional, like it almost
yeah.
hurts, that
Yes,
kind of love.
yeah,
I
yeah,
would love them to also feel
yeah.
great
Yeah,
for themselves. I am everything I need to have
yes.
that experience. And there's usually like tiny
Mm.
little spotlights where because we don't feel that every single day, but there
Yeah,
comes a time when you're just sitting or you're somewhere and you're like,
yeah.
I'm just awesome. I want
Yeah,
that feeling. I want that feeling. So true love, the love
yeah,
of another
mm,
human or
yeah,
pet, it can also be happening that way.
yeah.
That feeling of awesomeness and
Uh,
of a wild, crazy adventure. Yes, you're
yes.
like, I'm nuts.
Like, well,
And
yeah.
do something. So those things,
Yeah.
so that some of those that self-fulfillment, that love of a human, and then just do something bananas.
Yeah.
Jump out of that plane, hike up that mountain, swim with that shark or like whatever. Safely and
Yeah.
all these things,
Oh my
right?
God.
But just to do something truly
Yeah.
adventurous where no matter how hard you try, you can't not smile.
Yes, right. You're such a gift
Oh, thank
to
you.
this world. Thank you so much. My
Well,
heart is like open, completely open. Oh my God, she's so beautiful.
that's awesome. Well, thank you for having this podcast and bringing
Thank
people like
you.
me and yourself more into this world. Like my
Yeah.
message is great, but if nobody hears it,
Mm.
doesn't really affect much. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for having
Oh
me
my
here.
God. Thank you, Rebecca. It's really, truly fun wisdom. That's how I see timeless wisdom at that. Thank you. Thank you
Thank you.
again. We'll talk soon. Bye for now.